Right, so I've got some cobalt blue, bit of ultramarine blue, burnt umber, burnt sienna, raw sienna, yellow ochre, bit of cadmium orange, bit of alizarin, and a bit of I think cadmium red. So these are the colors that I'm going to use for this painting. So it's a fairly warm sky, so I'll make use of a bit of yellow ochre and even a bit of cadmium orange. So and it's like fairly warm over here, so it's just a pale wash that I'm after. And I'll run a bit of alizarin and a bit of cobalt blue into the wash. And for the water, I mix a bit of cobalt teal blue with a bit of ultramarine blue. Needs a bit more of the teal blue there. So I'm not leaving any real space for the trees, leaving any whites for the trees. So I'm just going to paint them well, once the water is dry. So the trickiest part of this painting is definitely this sand with like so many footsteps on them. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to tackle that, finish this off completely, and then move on to the trees and the rest of the painting. So I'm not going to put in all the footsteps, and just barely put in like 20 or maybe even less than that, just to give an idea that there are so many footsteps here. So that's what I'm after. And I'm going to mix kind of a muted, it's almost a purple color. So what I'll do is I'll make use of this warmth here, maybe add a bit of blue and maybe a bit of alizarin crimson. And I'll mix some more separately, which will be a bit more warmer than that. Making use of all the colors that was there in the palette and make it a bit more warmer. Right, so let's get this started. So the paper is not wet. I'm going to paint this dry paper with lots of dry brush strokes. And there we go. So I'm trying to leave a bit of white space, and these spaces would become bigger as we come further away from the horizon. So this will depict a bit of depth. Right, so that'll be my first wash for this sand, and I'll let it dry. I don't need I don't want that to dry a lot, it's just a little bit. Whilst it's drying, I'll mix the darker color. So again, it's a bit of purple. I'll start with alizarin, add a bit of cobalt, and maybe even a bit of burnt sienna separately. I'll mix that separately, so I'll use these two colors to put in the darks. Let's start with the foreground. So it's still wet on wet, so I'm not putting in all the footsteps, just a few. And they become smaller and smaller with the distance, so it's very important to maintain that. And so there's a slope here, so I'll make use of the same color to denote the slope as well. It's a bit too wet there, but that's all right. It's just right. So that's pretty much it for the sand. So this area looks really good, but I'm not that happy with what I put in here. So I'll let that dry completely and see whether I can do something about it. And whilst we are on it, I'll just darken a few areas. Just gives a bit more interest. Right, so that should be it. And now it's time to move on to the foliage here. I think I must have missed an area of sand here. I'll put that in. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for the sand. Viridian. So the Viridian in my palette has like, I haven't used it in a while. It's like totally dry. So let's squeeze in some fresh paint. And I'm mixing it with a bit of burnt sienna and even a bit of cad orange in there. All right, so we'll start with, I'm not sure how wet this is. Just put a stroke on 3. Yeah, it looks good. It has dried sufficiently. Yep, so that should be good. And a bit of foam green here as well. And a lot of foam green here. Use the fan brush. Just Now it's time to mix the kind of a muted green, so I'll make use of the teal, cobalt teal blue, and mix it with a bit of blue, bit of burnt sienna. It's just needs a lot more blue in there. And I'll add a bit of raw sienna, everything into it. A lot more blue needed. It's almost like a black color in there. Yeah, that's about it. This part of the tree is like going all the way into the top of the painting, and bit of, what do you call, warmness in there. So I'll make use of a bit of cadmium orange, where the sunlight falls on the foliage. So that's pretty much what I wanted. So I don't want these two shapes to look in a similar fashion. So this is much taller, and this side of the tree is like much shorter. And I'll make use of my Swiss Army knife and just make a few marks here and there. So I don't know what, for some weird reason I have missed this part. So let's fill that in as well. It just needs to be filled in, that's all. I don't know, I just maybe got a bit distracted and just completely missed that part. That's all right. Right, so that's pretty much what is there in the reference photo. I might, yeah, I'll put in a few waves just to, they are in the distance, they are not in my focal area or anything else, but so I need to be very careful that I don't bring too much attention over here to the waves, but it needs to be done, otherwise it won't read as a C. all good. Right. Now what else? Now it's what I'm thinking is to give a bit of scale to this painting. So we have painted these footsteps, and how do we know that this is a footstep? We don't have anything to compare it. It could be mud, it could be just a rough street, a gravel road, anything. So how do we know that these marks are actually footsteps? So what we need to put in is a known shape, a shape of which we know the size correctly. Maybe a car, maybe a dog, or a human figure. So all these things, when we add them to the painting, we get scale. We know, then we know how big this tree is. Then we know how big these marks are. So I'm going to put in a figure here, just for the purpose of scale. I'm not really worried about how he looks. It just needs to be there. So I'll give him a kind of a blue shirt. Somewhere here. Black shorts. Right, and this leg looks a bit funny. I'll just remove it. And I'll put a few of these marks here. So after I have painted all these whites look a bit too pale for me. So I might just glaze a bit of color. And I'll also just make it a bit more neat and a bit of red. On the warning sign, and the same red into his shorts or whatever he's wearing. Right, so now time to put in a few darker bits to finish this off. So it's like right, so I have completely dried this and it looks nice, and it got a white spot here, and what I'm thinking is to make that into another figure, or maybe two figures over there. Hope you enjoyed this demo. Please leave any suggestions or comments or ideas for any future demos in the comments below. Thanks for watching and happy painting.